Hey, well, welcome to the Afterburn podcast. My name is Joe Alvarado, and this is episode 4. And I get a chance to have a conversation with my friend Roberta. She is the studio leader at Cherry Creek Lifetime here in Colorado. I'm the studio leader at the Centennial location. And so we work together from a distance, of course. And in this episode, we talk about power. That's the programming at Lifetime where we teach to power zones. And those of you who take my classes on this channel know all about power zones because I have several power zone classes that you've probably ridden to. And so I hope you enjoy a little bit of a deeper dive into the discussion of power zones. This is my friend Roberta. This is the Afterburn podcast. Let's get into it. Hey, well, welcome to the Afterburn podcast. My name is Joe Alvarado. And as I just said in the introduction, this is my friend Roberta. Roberta, thank you so much for being here today on my podcast. It's brand new and I'm so excited. You were one of the first people that I thought of inviting when I started this whole thing. And I feel like, and I want you to take a little bit of time to introduce yourself too, but I feel like if we were to record our conversations, that would be a great podcast because we always get into these crazy conversations about power, about cycle, about life and all this stuff. But would you just introduce yourself to everyone?
Yeah. So I'm Roberta. As Joe mentioned, we both are studio leaders. We work for Lifetime, and that's how we came to know each other. I've been a group fitness instructor for almost 15 years now. It feels like it's the only thing I know how to do. I'm kidding.
Well, you're really good at it.
No, I love it. So I think you got to see how passionate I am about teaching of our classes. And it's been my happiest place has been teaching cycling or group fitness classes. And cycling's definitely up there on my top classes to teach for training too. So I think, to get to know me a little bit, I would say you would definitely meet me at a cycle room or a yoga studio, but cycling's definitely my place of being a warrior, being anything I want to be that day. And I love it. I love it so much.
Well, I know, and we've had the privilege of team teaching a couple of times. You've come over to our studio in Centennial, and I've been over to Cherry Creek where you teach, and it's been so much fun to share the stage with you and to share that passion. And I've also taken some of your classes and just been kind of in the audience and felt that emotion and felt all the passion that you have. And I've always appreciated it. I've always admired how much you put into your classes. And I'm really anxious. I know we've had a lot of conversations, but I'm excited to learn a little bit more and to share with some of the things that I might already know, but with our audience today about, you said you started about 15 years ago. And can you tell me, like, what did you start in cycle or did you start with yoga? Or how did you start?
No, so cycling, I think, was the one that I dreaded the most doing when I first started, or when I first started to teach, or when it came to group fitness classes. I think it was probably the most challenging one because I don't know, some people might agree or disagree. I think cardio is probably one of the hardest things because you just maintain suffering for a longer period of time. So,
at least in your class, right? No,
huh?
At least in your class. You're scaring everybody away. You're maintaining.
Oh, come on.
No.
Anybody can attest to going to any cycle class, and it's always super hard. But so it was because it was my weakest class. It was what got me into wanting to be really good at it. I'm like, there's got to be, I know that there's adaptations that are going to happen. I was already a very strong athlete as it was. I've always loved training, and so it was the one that I felt like I gotta overcome this. And this was probably when I was like, I don't know, probably 19, 20 years old was when I started to take cycling more seriously. But then getting into the science gritty part of it was only a little bit later when power training and zone training became more spoken about and within group fitness and spin classes.
Well, we're definitely going to talk about some of the science, because that's some of, I guess, some of my some of the conversations that you and I have outside of, recording a podcast, that we talk a lot about power zones and that type of training. So we're definitely going to talk about that here in a little bit. But you took something that you thought you were a little weak at, and you decided, I'm going to become powerful at it.
Yeah.
That is like, I feel like that's just in your nature, like, just, in getting to know you, you're like, I'm going to conquer this. I'm going to get better at it. Right. Is that kind of like in your DNA, or what drives you? Like,
I mean, I guess it comes down to, like, when you see that there's something that's hard for you, that you're only going to add another thing under your belt if you get good at it. And that's how I think, if it's something that I know makes sense for the health of my body, like physically, health wise, I then I'll invest myself in it. And then I'll put it all in. Like, for example, when it comes to cycling, I know that the chances of me having an injury are much lower than if I were to be trying to be the best runner.
yes.
So then I feel more safe to go all out in certain types of training that I know won't be as hard on my body. And once I know I've gotten clear, I'm good, then I don't know how far I'll go with it. Like, I'll go until there are no other steps to take. But I think we all know that when it comes to our body's capabilities, it's just endless journey of seeing how far you can go.
Well, you said two things there, and I want to point this out, because when we first started this conversation, you were like, this is something that we know we're going to feel a lot of pain during. But then you just said, but it's not going to be something where I get injured. And I love kind of the balance there, because yes, you're right. There are some classes, and if we're giving it our all, they're a little, we get into that, the pain, area of, this is a hard effort, or this is, how much longer do I have to hold this, right? But at the same time, to your point, I'm not like, it's no impact on my body. Like, I'm not hitting the ground over and over again when I like somebody who runs or jumps or hikes. It's on this bike, right? That even though I'm exerting all this power, my heart rate's up, my focus is high, all of this is happening. You're not injuring your body. I love that. Would you just air that out just a little bit?
Yeah, I think it's a beautiful type of training. Like, when the challenge that comes from a marathon or from a triathlon, it's the scary part when you're training for things like that is, how much of an impact is it going to have on my longevity? How much more, for how long am I going to be able to keep doing this? And so every time there's a half marathon, or, you're doing long runs, I always worry, like, man, I finished. Great.
Sure.
I did it.
Yeah.
And then I just worry, is this going to have an impact on me if I do it again?
Right.
Or is it going to have an impact on me 5 years from now? And that's why cycling has taken a big part in my life, because I know that there's no impact, right? You're not hitting that same joint, same knee joint, same hip joint. Hopefully both your legs are the same length. Hopefully you've trained both sides evenly. Hopefully when you get into your car, you're not just falling into one side. So with cycling, we're so protected by having our body weight on that seat, and moving off that seat with control and with activation of specific muscle groups that stabilize our hips. But it's non-impact, right? We're doing all these things without creating any kind of just that hammering of even I teach an extreme class at 9 a.m. here, and I love it. And there's times I'm like, we'll do this once a week.
Yeah. And that's a
Yeah.
HIIT class. For those of you who don't know what extreme is, that's a
Yes.
high intensity interval class that we offer at Lifetime. And you're right. And I love how you're explaining this, because again, you're saying it could be hard, right? We could do hard things. It could be on a
Hmm.
bike, but it could also be something that doesn't cause long-term damage to the body. And you and I both know that in teaching cycling for the amount of years we have, it's for all ages. You know, like I have
Yeah.
a gentleman by the name of Lee. He just turned 84, and he takes my class every week. Every week, he's a tall man. I think he's like 6'4", really tall guy. Comes in and has this deep voice, and he'll remind me a lot. He'll say, I'm 83, right? That's how he, or 84. And I said, I know, Lee, and I love that you're here. And then you get the college age athletes, and everybody in between. And this is so encouraging, because for those of you who are listening, who normally are on a bike when you are on this channel with me, you're doing the right thing for your body, and you're going to be able to do it for a long time. And we're not discrediting or saying don't go out and try a marathon, or don't go out and do other things. But what we are saying is, as a regular routine, you may want to consider cycling, because it is going to be something that is going to help you for the long haul. Like, you're really explaining that well. I really appreciate the insight that you're giving us with this. That's so good. What else would you say about that?
Yeah. I mean, I even thinking, or how far I know that the longer that we're training, and the decade after decade, you want to think like, okay, so what else can I achieve? And gosh, I mean, I know that I don't want to sound like I'm just a fanatic about cycling, but I'm with you, Joe. I love it too. And it's just like, I know that when it comes to, for example, flexibility and cardiovascular, those are both two things that you can't see, right? You
Yeah.
can't see when somebody has a strong heart, strong lungs. But when it comes to, let's say, muscle definition or strength, sometimes we can easily see that from the outside. And that's the beauty that I see in, like, cycling example. You
Yeah.
find all different types of athletes, all different sizes. It doesn't matter. But the cardiovascular strength that each person has, it's
Yes.
hidden. It's
Yes.
like
I
you
like
never
that.
know.
Yeah.
And I love discovering that more, even in me, like
Yeah.
seeing how, we'll talk more about FTP, but when it comes to threshold, I had a certain power output that I was like, okay, that's my goal. And then when I see that I've hit that goal, and now I'm training in that goal, and now that goal is no longer my goal anymore, because now it's become my norm, then you realize I can reach another threshold. And
Yeah.
it's just by consistency. It's just by just letting the magic happen when
Yeah.
when it comes to training consistently in zones, and smart training over this, it's the whole thing, like, train smarter, not harder. Like,
Yeah.
that's what I feel like we can do so much with zone training. And on the bike, it's we can use science. We can do rest to work ratios, and match it just right, where you're going to be getting results, and it's measurable. You see it in the wattage.
Yes.
And, like, that's the thing that I love too about the longevity of it, is that it's you, if you're consistent with it, there's no way around it. For every action, there's a reaction. And
Yeah.
if you keep training, that eventually your threshold keeps going up and you're just like, I guess that's just how it is. If you're doing it on a consistent basis, it's just going to happen. And
Yeah.
it feels so good, to be
Yes.
like, wow, my body's making these adaptations, like, going down to the amount of your aerobic capacity, or how it's how comfortable you feel at a certain wattage that before was horrendous. And that, a year later, you're like, wow.
Well, let's talk about that. Let's kind of explain that for those who are listening by audio, and if you're watching the video, we just let's explain what power zones are. Now, I have a few, and by the way, when I take any of your classes, I feel like I'm training for like the biggest event of my life. That's how you make me feel when you're
Like,
in there.
pay
You're like, we're
attention.
gonna, you're like
This is
preaching to me
important.
on the bike. It's pretty good. But let's explain power zones. Now, I do, for those who are listening, I hope you've taken one of my Power Zone classes on my channel. If you haven't, Roberta, let's talk about that. Power zones are based off of what we would call a functional threshold power. There's 7 zones, and let's talk about it. Where would we start us off with this conversation?
So, I mean, whenever I start a power class, to make it simple, I explain that our power class, the whole entire hour is built around getting to know your wattage, getting to know where the wattage that you're creating is the energy output that from strength and speed, resistance and speed together, those create a power output.
So on a bike, just to again further explain, if you have that ability on your bike, you would have a power meter, right? And the power meter is most typically on the left crankshaft. It's like a little box looking gadget, right? And exactly what you're saying, it's measuring how many times you're going in circles, right? And how much resistance you have. So it's force and velocity, and those two metrics come together to produce an output in measurable, what we call watts, like light bulb watts. I like to say that too, like a light bulb watt, right?
Right.
Okay.
So once you have that, now you take it and you put it into each power zone. Where's your zone 1? This is where we're at now. To find out that middle ground, what we were saying about your FTP, 100% would be working at your threshold. This is my 100% that I can sustain. This is 100% effort that I could keep going. And so that's what we call then your 100% output for 100% FTP would be our orange line, or that zone 4. And then from there you have.
Now, just to clarify, that doesn't mean 100% of everything you've got, right? When we say functional threshold power at 100%, that's measured in a test, and you and I both have given that test. And what that is and again, correct me where I'm wrong here, because I really want our audience to understand this, because training with power zones is so powerful. This functional threshold 100%, what we're talking about, is you get that number from an FTP test, a functional threshold power test, which professional athletes would normally take 1 hour to determine that. So really, what can I realistically hold for up to 1 hour? That is 100%. That's my zone 4. Am I right on that?
Yeah. So that's where, to find that number, most correct would be to ride consistently for the hour, or I would say even 30 minutes consistently, right, Joe? Like even 30 minutes consistently riding at your best effort. That would be roughly what we're saying is your benchmark for where you're going to be able to sustain. Above that, you're going to be anaerobic, right? So anaerobic meaning you don't have enough oxygen for the demand. So your body's going to be on a time limit. The more intensity, the less time you're able to stay in it. Now, anything under your threshold, right? Anything under your FTP, your functional threshold power, now is down to aerobic. So that means that you have enough oxygen to supply the demand. So the lower the intensity, the longer you can stay in it. So now to find out what is your threshold, we have our FTP assessment, right? Where we ride at our hardest for 20 minutes. That's another type of assessment, not as accurate, but it gives us a good
close
idea.
enough. Yeah.
So 20 minutes at your hardest, and then you take 95% of that. And then now we know, okay, so 95% of the average watts for those 20 minutes. So you might be fluctuating, but we try to keep it consistent the whole time, same RPMs. And now we have a number that's saying, okay, for about 20 minutes, this is as hard as I can go. So we're going to take 95% of that and then hold that as your zone 4. That's what we're saying.
So let's just say somebody was able to ride at 200 watts for 20 minutes. That would be 190 would be would that be their FTP? Yeah. I'm no good at math, so you got to help me here.
So if it's 200, 5% would be minus 10. So yeah, 190.
Yeah. Okay. So your threshold, if you were to do the math and somebody were to ride for 20 minutes and you average 200 watts, your output, you would take 95% of that. 190 would be your zone 4. Okay.
Correct. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. And then that's where it all begins. You find your
Yeah.
FTP, and then now we're able to know, okay, are we wanting to work in more aerobic zones, right? If you're wanting to build more, not so much on burning carbs or instant energy, but let's break down your body fat reserve, which is something we have an abundance of. So then you work on lower zones, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's where working smarter, not harder comes in, right? Because we're so used to just burning through carbs all the time. Now for your body to stay consistent, be able to endure endurance training, to be
Mm-hmm.
able to hold, your body's just not, hasn't made the adaptations for it when it comes to, even mitochondria count. When you're holding a zone 2, that's why zone 2 training is so important. If your body's not going to multiply cells if it's not necessary, it's not going to do it
Yes.
if it's not stimulated to. So yeah,
Yes.
we have to hold that zone 2, zone 3. And then you're like, well, then I want to increase the amount of the capacity there, or the power capacity that I have.
Mm-hmm.
Then you would have to then work on higher zones,
Yes.
right? That
And
then
there's 7 zones, by the way. I don't know if we said that yet, but there's 7 zones.
mm-hmm.
Yeah.
No, we haven't.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's clarify that there's 7 zones. So go ahead. I'm sorry.
So that's what makes power training even more interesting, is that for example, for you to hit your zone 7, right? Zone 7 power zone. Let's say that your zone 7's 700 watts.
Okay. And that's
You're
the
not
top of the top.
top of the top. For you to hit a heart rate zone 5, if you did your zone 7 for, let's say, 10 seconds, you hit 700 watts.
Mm-hmm.
That's your zone 7. Your heart rate wouldn't hit a zone 5 right away. So that's why training just under heart rate zones, it's like your heart rate is an effect of the exercise that's being, it's
Yes.
how do you say it? It's the body's
It's a
reaction.
response. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a response.
It's the body's reaction to the work. So
yeah.
what is the work?
I love what you're saying, because you're basically qualifying me as a credible instructor. And here's why. Because when I have like different types of training on my channel, and some of them are heart rate based, and some of them are power zone based, and some of them are just rhythmic, right? But if you're watching this, you already know, when I do a heart rate zone based class, I always say a phrase. I always say heart rate chases effort. I always say that. Right. Like it doesn't go right to it.
That.
Right. So that's another way to say what you just said, that your heart rate chases the effort. So it doesn't get there right away. But with power zone training, you can get right where you want or need to be, or are asked to get to in that type of training in the moment. So it's a different type of training. I love that you're making me more credible right now, Roberta, because and to your point earlier, I want to point this out too, because again, you say the aerobic zones, right? They're under zone 4. So you have zone 1, for recovery, 2, 3, excuse me. And you're saying that your body, in those zones, you could burn fat and you could build endurance, right? And so that is, anytime I do a fat burning ride, I am saying, you guys, we got to keep it.
You just got to stay in it.
We got to sustain a lower output for a longer period of time, right? We rev up the engine, get the engine warm always. But you're making me look good, right? I think that's why I had you on this.
You're doing a good job.
Yeah. but there's science behind it, right? It's what you're burning, how you want to train, the purpose behind your training, improving your threshold. Like I love it. I love it. Go ahead.
No, I mean, with zone 2 training, it is probably just as challenging in a way, because you're going to hold that for a while. And I guarantee when you're in zone 2, after an hour, to be consistent with it, it starts to kick in. And then it's in that moment that like starts to kick in, where you're really starting to now question, okay, how much longer can I keep this consistent? And it's not until you make your body go through those adaptations that it's going to do it. Zone 2 training is the hardest to stay in zone 2. But that's where you're gonna, I imagine it as like a triangle, like your base. I would say like your base is that zone 2.
Okay.
The wider your triangle, the more that it can hold. The weaker the bottom, right? The weaker your zone 2, the easier it'll tip over.
Love
So
that.
that's where, like having a strong base, having a higher aerobic capacity just widens the range of how much power you might actually even be able to hit if you've already made the base adaptations
Yeah.
of utilizing different energetic systems, having the amount of capillaries and blood flow going through the muscles that are at work.
Yeah.
And so you're the amount that you can sustain is now, okay, I could probably hold zone 5 or above threshold for longer now because my body has a strong zone 2 training. And then also, so for sure it's great that you're getting your, I would say, informing everyone that's taking class with you as well as getting them to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting because a lot of the comments that I get during some of the power zone classes where we hold long efforts is I didn't realize how hard it was to just stay disciplined at that certain output, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of, so many of us are used to riding to the rhythm or pushing really hard, peaks and
getting that break.
valleys, right? And getting the
Where's my
break in
zone 1?
between. Yes.
Right?
Yeah. Let me go hard and then take a break and go hard and then take a break. And when you have to stay in a zone, which is the the beauty, if you will, of power zone training, it starts to get hard. It starts to get hard. So one of the things that I love about power zone training is it emulates what professional cyclists do to prepare for a race day. So let's just hypothetically say there's a race. It's going to be, I don't know, 100 miles. It's going to take, 3 hours? I don't know. I haven't done a 3-hour 100-mile race before, but let's just say it's going to take 3 hours, and you kind of know the terrain, or you study the terrain. What power zone training does is it helps you, once you know your functional threshold, you're able to divide up your energy within that 3 hours to successfully complete that 100 miles and do it without burning out in the first hour, right? I mean, that's really like the purpose behind.
That's so true. When you train under a controlled environment, and you get to know your numbers, you get to know your body, you know the tools that you have when you're outside. Like that's one of the, I have a lot of cyclists that do take class with me, and I just remind them, like, guys, I know that we want to be outside, and for sure that's important too, but the controlled environment where you do get to train smarter, not harder. We'll train harder out there. You can't decide the terrain that you're going to get.
Sure.
But indoors, you can train. Okay, we're staying in this zone for this amount of time. Nothing's going to change. Nothing's going to make us slow down or get in the way. Yes. So you're able to now just train physically your body. And then when you're outside, you've done it. You know how it feels. You know where your body is at from trusting the training that you've done. It's a big trust factor when it comes to zone training. I think it's like, I trust that I know my zones, and I don't have to wonder. I know. I've been there.
So the lovely and amazing thing about power zone training, again, is that you can customize the ride for the goals that you have. And so it's one of the reasons why some of my power zone training classes are called threshold work, or it's called fat burning, or it's called endurance training, because we really are working endurance. We really are burning fat. We really are building, that aerobic base. Like if you've ever heard somebody like us say, let's build our aerobic base, and you never knew what that meant. Like hopefully today it's making more sense about your aerobic base, that foundation of what your body is able to do, and work with that. So that's beautiful.
I love seeing those adaptations. I had a member, I take classes all the time too, or I'll end up going on rides outside. And one of the members, he was always used to doing more like zone 5, zone 1, zone 5, zone 1. And once I was like, look, just try to hold zone 2 to zone 3. Let me see out. And he just stuck to it. And the calorie, I wouldn't say even the calorie, but the amount of it, he said that he started sweating for the first, he's never sweat as much as he has, which is true because
Yes.
when you're burning fat, I don't know how to explain this very well, but that something about the heat that's created or the amount of water that's used, it's so you see that your body is actually burning more when you're sustaining more rather than going through these ups and downs during the workout, of course, you know,
Yes.
because like
Yes.
for sure both types of trainings, like you said, are important. That there is
Yeah.
an afterburn when you're
Yes.
working with higher training,
The
but
Afterburn
like
podcast.
when you do see yeah, when you do see the adaptations happening and people that or and cyclists that haven't given it like, okay, let's see what happens to train in zone 2 for a while, and then you just, wow, I'm burning more, I'm sweating more, I'm detoxing more,
Sure.
and then it's a different type of mind game too when it
Yeah.
comes to it.
Yeah.
Like when you're training on these high zones all the time, you're going to get that break.
Yes. Yeah, I think, and I'm not sure if I know exactly how to describe it either, other than we've both experienced it in that when you are training, like such to you were saying that gentleman, zone 5, over threshold and then taking a break, over threshold and taking a break. There's time to do that. There's definitely times to do intervals in that way, and there's a benefit to that. But what I think happens is your body, you rev up the engine, it cools it down really quick through a little bursts, little sweat, and then you're good, and then you do it again, you sweat a little, then you do it again. But when you're forced to keep the engine warm, right, then your body has to consistently cool itself down, therefore you're sweating more. Is that fair to say? Something like that? Yeah. Okay.
Oh man, when we do our 90-minute rides, I mean, when
I've been in one of those. Yeah.
Right. I feel like I have like a Roberta pond under me when we're doing like just zone 2. Whereas to when we do more of the fluctuating ones, like for sure I still have a little, a mini pond, but it's still,
but the pond is bigger when you have those longer efforts.
I'm proud of it. I'm like, don't touch it. We're going to look at it for a little while and then
pictures.
We'll clean. Okay. I'm like,
I love
that's
that.
pretty nasty.
I love that. Okay, so let's shift gears just a little bit here. And of course, any power references, use them, whatever. But can you, for those who are aspiring instructors, those who maybe they already are instructing and they're looking to get like a few tips from somebody who is as passionate as you are, who's been teaching as long as you are, what would you say to the instructor who wants to get started? They take classes, they've fallen in love with it, they want to take some next steps. Like what would you encourage somebody to do?
You mean like to start taking power classes?
To start teaching. Let's just say they wanted to go from the audience to the stage. Like what's some steps you would encourage somebody to do or to take?
I mean, for sure, I think when you experience it yourself, right? Like if you are somebody that has been taking power class and you're ready to step into the role of building an outline or a profile for people, is that what you're saying? Like actually being able to get on stage and be able to teach a class?
Yes.
I mean, knowing that you've been through it, you've taken enough classes, you've been through it in your skin. You didn't just read about it. You've been through the different types of training from zone 2 to above threshold. And, and one thing I did want to mention is I think for Joe and I, for example, one of the reasons that we do talk a lot about zone 2 and I do think that a lot of fitness professionals are talking more about, working more under threshold, is because it's not what most people are used to, right? They're more used to that intensity, keep you busy, keep me distracted,
right?
And the mind game when I was saying like where you got another 30 minutes of consistency, and it's having gone through all the mind games is what I think builds the best instructors too. It's the best students are the best instructors. And Once you then
I
start getting
agree.
into, right? And I feel like one of the best things you can do is to understand threshold and what that is. I feel like number one thing is, as an instructor, you have to understand your own threshold and be able
Yeah.
to explain
Yes.
what that feels like, because
Yes.
you don't want to go too far, because then you're not going to be able to sustain it above 10 minutes
Mhm.
and or above the 8 minutes, right? But
Yeah.
if you go too under, then you're kind of shortening out people of being like, that isn't really their threshold. So I think for instructors, or for people that are aspiring to be better at training others, it would be really get to know yourself, go through um, finding out your FTP, the
Mhm.
sensation of, like, it's so interesting when you think about, all right, if I had to go as hard as I can, as
Mhm.
hard as I can, I could probably go as hard as I can for about, let's say, 8 seconds. I could
Mhm.
push 5 to 8 seconds. I can go the highest wattage, zone 7. All right, so what is something that then you can push really hard, but it's getting close to that 1 minute, and you can make it to that 1 minute? Above 1 minute, your legs are gonna die. You're either gonna pass out, or your legs are just not gonna be able to push anymore, right? Like,
Mhm.
that's so above just short amount. Now you got zone 6, and then your
Yes.
zone 5. What's that hard effort that you're really questioning every minute that goes by? You're like, that's VO2 max. That's your
Yeah.
zone 5. That's above threshold, where nope, sorry, not going to be able to hold this for above 10 minutes. That's
Yeah.
impossible.
Yeah.
But I can do it for a while. So there, now you're getting to know what's your VO2 max, what's
Yes.
above your threshold, and that you can keep it going for those, above 3 minutes, but under the 10 minutes, right? About 3 to 8 minutes. And
Yeah.
then comes your threshold, right? The one that, like, okay, it is, you can hold it for above the 8 minutes,
Mhm.
but it's such hard. And like, to be able to speak to that,
Yeah.
and make sure that people, that you're able to get people to experience each zone.
Mhm. Mhm.
I feel like that's the I love our instructors. Like, I've had amazing instructors, and I
Yeah.
love taking class with you, Joe. I love I love that I can trust that, and if I just listen, I know you're going to take me where I need to go. And
Yes.
I feel
Yes.
like when members see that they've seen either the instructor go for it, or they see us training,
Mhm.
and then I feel like that's most of the work is done
Yeah.
when
So
you've experienced it, and you're able
I
to
love that.
right.
Yeah. So you're encouraging the aspiring instructor, or even the current instructor, to really pay attention to how it feels. What is actually happening to my body? How long could I sustain this? And what does it mean when I'm in
Mm-hmm.
zone 2? What does it mean when we're doing that? And really kind of record all of these things to mind, because I love that you're saying that, because one of the things that I try to do is, to the best, we all try to do to the best of our ability, but I feel like some of the great instructors do really describe from experience how they're feeling, right?
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that I try to do is, I have this phrase that I encourage other instructors with, is say what you see and communicate how you feel. So in other words, if I'm teaching a live class, I might see a few things that are looking good, or a few things that people are doing
Mm-hmm.
right, maybe posture, maybe just the energy they're giving, maybe their smile, whatever. And I'll say, oh, that looks so good. Like, you're saying things that you see, or you're correcting something. Maybe you see somebody that's a little hunched over, they have their shoulders a little bit too high. So you're saying what you see. In other words, okay, relax your shoulders a little bit. You're correcting based off of what you see. And then you're
Mm-hmm.
also communicating how you feel, because I know if I'm doing the work and I'm feeling it, you've got to be feeling that. Right.
Yeah.
So those two things have always been successful for me, saying what I see, right? What's happening out there, and then
Yeah.
communicating how I feel, because you're probably feeling the same. Would you agree with that?
Yeah. I think that's a good point too. Even things like, that, shifting their awareness to, like, okay, let's lower the shoulders. Just by doing that alone, it took their mind away from, let's say, how hard the wattage that they were holding, you know,
Mm-hmm.
or you might give them like another cue that will help them get more with less effort. Example, like one of the things that helps me that then I blurt out loud, I'm like, drop your heel.
Mm.
Like just by dropping the heel, it makes me stop pushing into the toes. It makes me engage more of the hamstrings.
Yes.
And then I'm like, focus on dropping down the heel. And then you start to feel that your foot is a little bit more mobile, or you feel more connected to the
Yes.
pedal when
Yes.
you're thinking about the feels of
Mm-hmm.
different areas. So like I'll do that. Like I'll be like, I see somebody that is just like this, and I'm
Yes.
like, drop your heel when you bend your knees. So you're going, so now they have a new focus point.
Yeah.
Create tension between your knees. Now they have a new focus point. So like as power instructors too, to keep people, to keep the form right, or keep people's mind in it, or think about something else. Like, all right, focus on, the tension between the knees. That's the other one that I use. Or actually, those are probably the two best ones that I
Yeah.
use.
Well, I love the analogy with the toes and the heel, because once in a while I'll say, hey, if there were a bunch of, if your mom told you to go out, like when we were kids, we would always recycle the cans or whatever that we would use in the house. And she would say, all right, make sure you crush the cans before you put it in the trash can. I would never crush cans with my toes. You would never see me like trying to, crush a can, but I would use my
Fail.
heel,
Yeah.
because the heel is where all the power is at, right? Like the heel is where you're really going to crush that can, make it smaller so it fits in, more fit in the bag or whatever.
Right.
And I think that's kind of the same, the
Muscle
same.
activation. Yeah. Like
Yes.
if right now, if I tell you flex your foot, you're already going to feel your hamstrings, your calves all engaged. Now, for you to point your toe completely on a pedal, that's just not going to happen, right? But
Yeah.
if you keep pushing into your toes, so yeah, little, as instructors, I feel like we have to keep giving micro cues
Yes.
just to either shift awareness, or make the biomechanics do that. If biomechanically your body's aligned and doing it right, like it's going to work. The changes are,
Yes.
you're going to see your wattage go up, or your RPMs,
Yeah.
your speed, you start to see the changes too. So yeah.
Yeah. Why do you think, it's hard to keep people more consistently at a lower output? In other words, as an instructor, um, when I know that we're not going to do like high intensity intervals, we're going to stay at a moderate place or even below that, I find myself having to over communicate. Do not overdo this.
Importance.
Do not, yeah, the importance and the why behind it, because there's something in us, and maybe it's the culture, maybe it's all the reputation that cycling, spinning has or whatever, that people
Mm-hmm.
just want to work really hard right away. And why do you think that is? Why, and what do you do about it? Why do you think people just want to go hard and sweat and then take that big break, and then you're constantly having to remind them?
I think it does keep. I think it goes back to that misperception
Mhm.
that to burn down more fat, or to make your body burn more calories or get more out of your workout, that means that you have to be pushing, and
Right.
then you'll get, like, I feel like people have that, a lot of us, I mean, even I would say that fitness, the field, I mean, I feel like our field has made so many every decade. I mean, back in the 1990s, I mean, I would say like even back then, zone training, or not having to work so hard, back then it was still big. And then
Yeah.
even 10 years ago, I would say, like, we started to see a lot of changes happening just over the last, I would say, 20 years at the most, where
Changes like
people are,
how?
huh?
Changes like how?
That people are, that it's, we're realizing that working out does that, pushing your body to maximum output, that doesn't mean that you're going to create the most change.
Right.
Your gains are the same.
Yeah.
if you're constantly hammering your body and pushing it hard, and then you get somebody else that's just doing a consistent, either zone 2 training, or then, having a balanced routine of
Mhm.
doing, like, then you see, oh, that person's making more gains. Why? So I feel like the but the mispercent, we still think that we're supposed, for us to get results, we have to feel it, and it has to be in our face. It has
Right.
to smack us right in the face.
Yeah.
But,
You have
and
to be
what we're
breathing
trying to,
heavy.
right. So I think what we're trying to explain as fitness professionals is that your gains will be close to the same if you just train correctly. And training
Yes.
correctly means training all zones, having
Yes.
that strong base,
Yeah.
and then building from there and doing both. But
Hmm.
if you don't help your body make those adaptations, so, you know I think another thing that makes it hard for people to work at that lower effort is because they're only going to start to feel it, like, I would say feel it maybe like 20-30 minutes in. Will they
Hmm.
start to feel,
Yeah.
okay, now try training, now try staying in zone 2 for a whole hour, no shift. You're going to see that pond. You're going to
Right.
see that pond. You're
You're
going
gonna
to
get the
see that
Roberta
reflection.
pond.
I feel
No,
like,
I
but it takes more time for you to see that, right?
yeah.
But
Yeah.
you know higher zones, you burn more calories.
Hmm.
Lower zones, you burn more fat, right? But then
Yes.
in lower zones, you have to stay in it for longer.
Yes.
In higher zones, you can't stay in it for longer, so you don't really have the time to break down the fat. So
Right.
it's like, so
Yeah. So if you're, for those calorie counters out there, higher calories doesn't necessarily mean you reach the goal, or doesn't necessarily mean that your body's transforming, because it could be the wrong type of calorie that you're
mm-hmm,
burning. Right. And
yeah.
so I love that. Um, what are I know that we all have stories of somebody who has come up to us uh, after class, or after several months, or even on the first day, and they've said, "Roberta, you've changed my life. The puddle changed my life." No, um,
Your pawn inspiration.
you're
Oh.
inspirational. No, I now that's just my age. The
Oh, Joe,
corny
like
dad
that
joke.
question, you saying that, like I start to see a bunch of people in my head. Like
Mm.
so many classes, so many members or people that I have trained with or trained. And, you know, I'm thinking of Camilo right now. I have this one member that, he always came to it was my 5:30 a.m. class. And
Okay.
of course, like, not that already alone is a challenge to wake
Yes.
up that early unless you are an early riser. And he just came he was my person. Like, if he was there, I was like, all right, we're good. So, and I think when I saw him beating me was when I think I felt like when you watch like these martial arts movies and you have like the sensei and like
Yeah.
like I
Yeah.
felt like like I was like, oh, my student has, like, I wanted to,
Surpassed.
yeah, like I
Yeah. Yeah.
wanted to pat. I think that was one of the biggest ones, was like, there was nothing I could do. I
Yeah.
tried, and I told him, like, I'm coming for you. And I'm
I'm
like,
coming for you. The
but,
puddle's gonna get bigger, and I'm coming for you now.
and so it's things like that, like when you see that, like, oh man, he trusted me and he kept coming,
Yeah.
and it worked. And
Yes.
because I knew, I was like, and I remember saying that to him, like, one day because he would be like, I don't know how you do it, Roberta. And I'm like, one day you're gonna beat me, and it's gonna be the opposite. I'm gonna say, like, I don't know how you did that.
Yeah.
And I didn't know how you did that. Like, I mean, I knew,
And that
but
day
it was,
came, right?
but yeah, it was,
How did
it's
he react? Like, what was that like after that class?
he was, you know, I think once you're getting closer to that point in your
Yeah.
training, you already know, like, you've earned it.
Yeah.
And it was just like, it's it's like reaching the top of a mountain together.
Yeah.
And he never let it go. Like, once, I feel like once you've trained to that point of like, you have a relationship with pain tolerance that,
The way you describe that.
well, yeah, we build a relationship with pain tolerance. So it's like almost like another person there with you while you're training at times. And, and I think like, because he had overcome it for to get to that point, it was just, you know, it was like, now it's like, keep going.
Yeah.
I'm no longer his goal. Like I'm not,
Now I need another
my
goal.
numbers aren't his goal anymore.
Yeah.
Now it's like, now what are your goals?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
and his goal might just be, I just love feeling good. I just love knowing that I can ride for this long
Yeah.
and this hard, and that's my gratification. Like, I don't need
Yeah.
anything else. Or I want to test my abilities, and you
Sure.
can, because you've
Sure.
been through it. You've been through it
Yeah.
all.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that I want to encourage instructors, if you're listening to this, uh, there are a lot of stories that we'll never hear, because not everybody's going to tell you their story. Not everybody's going to tell their, what they're going through. It could be just so deep and heavy that they can't say it. It could be all kinds of different scenarios. And I think of one story, and I say this because you never know who you're going to reach, right? You never know, because sometimes we'll know the story, like you heard the story, he beat you, right? And there's a lot of satisfaction in that. But I think of a time that happened not too long ago. There was a couple that came in, older couple, and they always come in with the big smile on their face. And I think they travel a lot, because they'll come in a couple of weeks at a time. Hey, we're off to Florida. Hey, we're off to Paris. Hey, I'm like, well, it must be nice, So they're in and out, and they came in, and I remember him always being happy and not being as happy. And I'm like, maybe he's tired or whatever. No big deal. Still said hi, still had a great class. He's like, hey, thank you so much. Still, less talkative. And he and his, I don't know if his wife or fiance, I'm not sure who it was, but they left. And then another member behind them said, hey, so-and-so. And I don't want to use their names or anything, but I said, yeah. He goes, he just lost his son a couple of months ago. And I was like, no way. Like, and he said, and this member said, and he comes to the gym because this is one of the ways that he stays, mentally healthy. Like, it's helping him get through. And I'm just like, wow. Like he would have never told, and he didn't have to tell me that. You don't have to say, but I say that because my heart dropped. And at the same time, I was reminded of why we do what we do.
The impact you make.
The impact. Yeah. And I promise you, Roberta, I promise you, everybody who's listening, if you've ever taught a class, there are going to be stories you're never going to hear, but you are making a difference. And the ones that you do hear, let those feed your spirit, let those feed your heart, let those feed your emotions to continue to drive the passion, really, because it's about the people that we get that trust. As you said that earlier, and that was super powerful. You said that he trusted you. He trusted the process, but really he trusted you. Roberta, you told him you're going to get there one day. And he started out way off, and he ended above and in front of you, right? That's beautiful. That's beautiful.
No, and even hearing your story too, Joe, like there's something about not doing things alone. As human beings, I feel like, if that person's going to be there for you, your instructor, it could be virtual, it could be but you just know that you are connected and you're not alone. And sharing that journey, it's like, it's kind of like that story, if the tree falls but nobody's there to hear it, did it actually make a sound? Something like that. It's like, it's, there is something that, of course it's good for us to train ourselves too. But when that there's, okay, I know that what they're going through and I'm going through it too. You're going through a journey and you're not alone. Even if what that person's feeling like, you know, when we take class with you on your, when you're on your channel, it's like, I know what you're going through. I know in your community, I'm watching. So it's not like, there's something that happens from community. There is something that happens from experiencing the same thing at the
Yes.
same time
Yes.
than it is to put on a recording sometimes.
Yes.
Or there's something there that during COVID, I had a Zoom class, and I would be like, oh, if you don't make it, like, just watch the recording. You know, a lot of people still do, because they get to know you, and they see you
Sure.
on the recording. They're like, oh, that's, you know, but there is also something that happens when you know that you're going through it with that person at the same
Yeah.
time, in the community building, either be in class or in a virtual class.
Yes.
And yeah, like hearing
Powerful.
that there's so many stories we know nothing that we don't hear about, and then when
Yeah.
we do, you're like, man, I'm just glad that I was here to create this for us, but
Yeah.
you did it. You know, we never feel like it's us, right? Like, we're like, no, this was all you.
Yeah.
I'm just glad that I was able to give
Yeah.
that place for you to
Yes.
find that, you know,
Yes.
and to find a place where you do feel everything's okay here. I'm good here. Everything is good.
Yeah.
And for us to be able to offer that for people as
Yeah.
instructors, it's just, man, it's such a gift.
It's
Like,
such a gift. It's what keeps us coming back and back and back. I want to go into a lightning round, and this is going to be fun. This is a new segment, right, of my podcast, and I'm going to start a sentence. You're going to repeat the sentence, but complete the sentence, right? So you're basically going to repeat after me. Okay. So here's the first one. One thing I do every morning that sets me up for success is.
One thing that I do every morning that sets me up for success is I have my green juice powder with vegan protein and collagen. I have to do that. Even if I'm running late. Like, I'm like, no, we're going to do
I
this.
could tell by your face, do you have to do that?
Somehow, you're like, somehow 5 minutes will turn into 10.
Yeah.
But I must have this. Like, I have it every single morning. And yeah, it just makes me feel like I eat some, but it just works for me.
All right. I like it. So one book that has changed my life is.
One book that has changed my life is, this one's a tough one. Like, because I'm going to be honest, but it has nothing to do with fitness. It's more spiritual. The Urantia book.
Which book? I'm sorry.
The Urantia book. This is a whole other tangent that we'll take another time. But or The Power of Now. The Power of Now is, that was.
I think you've mentioned that before.
Eckhart Tolle. Yeah, it's you know, that's probably one of the books too, for sure. Because in The Power of Now, he talks about how you find an introspector inside of you, right? Like, who's watching Roberta? Who's watching the world around you? Yeah. And then that was powerful for me, even as the person that I am today, that the fitness professional that I am even today, because I observe Roberta and I talk to her, and I'm like, you know, when it comes to hard times, either on a bike or in life, you know, there's things that I'm like, I can watch myself as an external observer and not be affected by so much of the things that I feel, but more so observe the things that I feel, either emotionally or physically. So yeah, Power of Now, if you haven't read that.
All right. Really one unusual daily ritual that supports my productivity every day is. So one unusual daily ritual that supports my productivity every day.
One unusual daily ritual that affects my productivity is.
That supports my productivity.
That supports my productivity. Honestly, my daily ritual, I mean, I have a 10-minute breathing exercise that I do. It's a meditation.
Yeah.
Every day. Every day I do it. And I think it sets me up for success because it reminds me of who I am. You know, like,
Yeah.
if you breathe for 10 minutes straight, I mean, of course, you're not going to be thinking about the breath the whole time, but you choose constantly to go back to the breath and numb out the thoughts, like
Sure.
just over and over and over again. And after I've been doing that for years, it brings me back to, that introspective observer that watches Roberta and the world around her. Like,
Mhm.
it reminds me to love myself. It reminds me to
Yes.
love Roberta. It reminds me that I'm alive, that bigger than there's something bigger that if there's a mind that can observe a mind or the world around me, it makes me feel like strong, and that
Yes.
everything's okay, and I'm just living on, so yeah, I would say that helps me be successful, because I know the things that are important in life. It reminds me of what's important in life. And
Love it.
yeah.
All right, two more. One of my favorite pieces of advice to give others is.
One of my favorite pieces of advice is to give others is you're okay. I got two, but one of
All
them
right,
is you
tell me.
only get good at something by doing it.
Yes, I
You
like that.
only get good at
I
something
like
by
that.
doing it.
All right. All right. So last one here. If you want to make 2024 better than 2023, make sure you
If you want to make 2024 better than 2023, make sure you
take Roberta's class.
take Joe's class. Take our class. Be compassionate towards yourself.
Okay.
But I mean, that's a big one. Man, come
Yeah.
on. That's a loaded question.
That could be
Make
loaded.
2024 better than 2023. I'm thinking of a second saying that I always think of, which is, you only know how strong you are when being strong is the only option you have.
Okay.
And the reason I think of that is because we go through year after year, and we go through difficulties, and you see how 2024 is what it is because of 2023.
Yeah.
And if it wasn't for 2023, you wouldn't have made the changes that you needed to make, or you wouldn't have had to be as strong. Man, I think I
love
botched
that.
that question. I don't know if I
No,
can,
no,
like, I don't know if
that's so
I'm
good.
not too deep,
And
Joe.
even no, you have too much. That's what it is. You said to have compassion on yourself, and I think that's so important. And you only know when you're strong when you have to be. I mean, those are valuable things.
I think
to
the
keep in
compassion
mind.
part is the one of the pieces, because like we keep trying to be more, and because there's so much to compare to all the time in the world around us, that if you just stop comparing yourself and just have compassion for the who you are, where you're at, and don't compare. Just like, I know I'm doing what I'm doing because it's the best that I can do. And if it's not the best that I can do, there are other things getting in the way of the best that I can do. But then again, so like, I think compassion is a big one, because you have to love yourself. You have to know that life is a journey, and life is just meant to be that it's an experience for you to grow. And if every year we're starting it out not thinking of everything we want to be, but everything that we are, and like, like, I'm gonna take who I am and let's go.
Yeah, I like it. Well, Roberta, I really appreciate you coming on.
I love this so
is
much.
episode 4 now. This is episode 4.
Wow.
This has been really, really good.
I'm honored. I'm so honored. Thank you for including me in this, Joe. You're an incredible human, instructor, person, all of the above. I'm so lucky to have you as a friend and as a colleague, and to work together, and to be able to call you anytime and geek out on power zones, and
which we do pretty often, right?
All the time. I mean, it's like every conversation, I'm like, we should have recorded that.
Yeah. We'll just record them all next time, and then put them on a season 2 of the Afterburn or whatever.
That's right.
But no, thank you so much, and thank you. I like our our friendship is super meaningful to me as well. We always go way too long with our conversations, even though we're trying to work, at work and stuff. But
Like,
but
this is a work
it's
call,
good.
but
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
But it's, I couldn't think of anybody more
Thank
like
you.
that. I wanted to, like, I have to call Roberta. She's got to be on here. And I have invited you in the future to come to my studio and record a Power Zone class and then put it on the
Oh, you
channel.
know I
So
will.
yeah, so I'm looking forward to that. I want to have a whole series where I have that's called Friends. I think I told you about it, and just have a lot of my friends come and I'll just be your student. I have 2 bikes here, and you teach the class, and I will just suffer. I mean, have fun. I mean,
Have
but
the most fun of your life.
yes, with the puddle right next to the puddle. But it's been great. It's been great. We'll definitely do this again. Um, I will put some links below in the description to connect with you if anybody's interested. They have any questions, anything like that, or if you're ever around the Cherry Creek area in Colorado or Centennial, come see us. Come see us in person.
Yes.
We would love to meet you and for you to take one of our classes. It'd be awesome. So
That'd be awesome.
everybody, yeah, thank you so much, everybody. We'll see you on the next one.
Thank you.
Bye.